All right, welcome back to another episode of Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics. My name is Troy, aka Keep Troy Blue. With me, as always, is Kathy Cannon, aka Cannon's Fodder. And news out of France today. Well, first of all, later on in the show, we're actually going to be doing a deep dive. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, check out that deep dive later on. Exclusively for Patreon subscribers. We're going to get back into the presidents. We had a request to do our own rundown of the presidents. I think we're going to do like our bottom 10 today, or worst presidents. Kathy's got a
I hope
doodle
it was
map.
10.
Yeah.
I hope it's 10 because I only did 10. I could have kept going, but that's a full 20% almost of the president's 16 point something percent. But you get the point.
Kathy's got an incredibly complex map of how bad the presidents were. I just scribbled some stuff on a napkin. But stick around. If you're the Patreon, stick around to the end of the show. We'll have exclusive content for our subscribers as well. Also, later on in the show, we have another edition of Troy's Lie of the Week. So stick around for that. Ooh. And who the
theme song and all.
Theme song and all. Coming up later in the program. France becomes first nation to enshrine abortion in their constitution in 50 years. I wanted it to be the first one since Roe v. Wade in the United States in 1973, because the irony of that would be incredible. But actually, Yugoslavia, which does not exist anymore, enshrined it in their constitution in 1974. So the second since the U.S. in 1973. But anyway, France today, the bill passed in a joint session of their parliament, recognizing the right, the constitutionally protected right to have an abortion, done largely in response to the American Dobbs v. Jackson decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Spooked the French, Kathy, and they've enshrined it in their constitution.
I don't think we spooked the French so much as that is them kind of saying, fuck off, America. Like, France is very passive aggressive. I don't know if you know this about French people.
The hell you say?
I know. It's wild shit right there.
Fucking French.
But I think like there's there's so much about this that I find hilarious because I'm a nerd, right? And France is still a Catholic nation. Like, I don't know if you know that or not. Like, nobody cares because it's France, but they're still officially a Catholic nation. So the fact that a Catholic nation has enshrined abortion rights just, I'm sure, is making like a lot of popes, or not a lot of popes, a lot of priests' heads explode, right? Those confessionals are going to be an interesting place.
It passed 720 to like 27. There wasn't even like a serious pushback, really. You know what I mean?
And and that's the other thing that's really interesting about it is like it passes that easily. It means it's not really a contested thing. It's not something that they felt the need to do. So they're doing it a little bit to say, like, America is a falling empire. Who's going to pick up the mantle of said empire? You're telling me that like the new king of England and like France aren't toying with the idea that it could be them whilst the Russian Empire is seizing territory? Like, it's all very turn of the 19th century, if you will. I'm going to go back to doodling. I'm going to doodle.
To be clear, France decriminalized abortion. You know, almost every nation on earth has decriminalized abortion. This is specifically mentioning it as a constitutional right in the Constitution. They're the first country in 50 years to do that. There's also a political angle to it, to be sure. Abortion has like an 80% approval rating in France. It's an easy win for President Emmanuel Macron, whose polling is in the toilet, and they're having an election
he needs a win,
next month.
To be fair,
or the month after, or something like that. So he needed an easy win, but it's good they did that. The intro to the bill specifically references the United States going back on abortion protection. So I just think the irony of it that we became a nation that enshrined that it wasn't in the Constitution, but because of the way SCOTUS works, it was a constitutionally protected right in 1973, inspiring all these other nations to do it, and now we're inspiring other nations to do it again for the other reason.
And that's what I think is sort of their passive aggressive little like, we'll show you where real liberty is. Because remember, the French Revolution in spirit was liberty, freedom, egalitarian, right, the whole thing. But my real curiosity here is what this does to UK politics, because we know Tories are bleeding out in public opinion. It's embarrassing to be a Tory right now. Labour is set to pick up huge victories in the parliament. And if I think a little bit, this is France egging on EU nations at large to, kind of start the domino effect in the direction of enshrining it as a constitutional right, to truly highlight the absurdity of what is happening in America, to either pull Americans back to reality or to make a case for the EU seizing global authority over the United States. Because the European Union, by design, functions in a similar way to America. Their states having a little bit more autonomy than ours, to be fair, but they're like, once again, is it going to be the situation where it's a geographical battle for global leadership, where the American empire falls back to the parent nation of the United Kingdom and France pissing back and forth for who gets to control the world via the Atlantic trade routes? Like, when they rolled back the clock, Troy, they went way back, is all I'm saying.
I'm so excited for the presidential breakdown. Just all this England-France stuff is making me really excited for some of my picks.
That is why my brain is in this, because I'm reading about fucking Zachary Taylor. Spoiler alert. This is why my brain is doing this. I apologize to everyone out there that just wants to learn about the news.
We're not just news. We're news with...
I know. We're news with canon. All right. So that's going to be an adventure. Yeah.
Yeah. News with contextual analysis.
You're the news. I'm the fodder.
So good on news. Speaking of some political stuff, Super Tuesday's tomorrow. Recording this on Monday. Super Tuesday's tomorrow. Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia all have primaries tomorrow. Nikki Haley, the DC Republican primary was over the weekend. I don't know if you noticed that, Kathy. Nikki Haley cleaned up. She got 60% in that DC primary, which is interesting.
Really? You thought it was interesting? I thought that was kind of the most predictable thing you could have.
Well, some people thought it was predictable. That's a pretty big margin, though. I mean, Trump has spent all his time attacking DC as the swamp. He even said that after her win. He was like, oh, yeah, of course she won the swamp. Ruff Filipkowski said that there's no, the Republicans that live in DC are all college, there's no actual MAGA that live in DC and can vote in DC. They're all college educated. They're all congressional staffers. Probably half of them hate Trump just because of the drama that he's caused on Capitol Hill in Washington DC.
Or were directly impacted by the insurrection. What as residents of the city and all.
I was mentioning that with Ray. I was like, yeah, of course. Half the town worked for him or was affected by him in some way.
Yeah,
they all can't stand him. But I just thought that was an interesting number that Haley won. It got I don't know, what was it, 23 delegates or something out of DC?
Something like that. I know it was 62 or something percent. You said. I think that is an interesting little bit. But I think Trump's reaction to it is more important than whatever the number was and whatever number of delegates she got. That's the least important part, is because I think his reaction to this was a 2-paragraph tweet with lots of uppercase language, right? And if we know his behavior by now, the longer the tweet, the more caps, the more scared and angry he is. And I think she's getting to him.
Well, she, DC or not, she needed a win. Absolutely. It was her first win. That was the other thing. Was she, Trump's been running the
think table. About this. Back in 2020, Biden hadn't had a win before Super Tuesday. Right? It was in a and maybe that's kind of what she's thinking. Maybe she's hoping that by tomorrow, I guess maybe her it's do or die time for her, I suppose, but that Trump's bullshit will have affected enough people that on the biggest primary day, that if you notice, she's been doing progressively better. And remember, politics is about trajectory, not, averages. Her numbers are going up. His numbers are going down. Point blank, period. At the end of the day, he's still winning by big margins. Fine. But are they as big as they were? there are fewer people to run against and your margins are shrinking, which means more people are looking for an anybody but Trump. And that was a similar thing that was happening in the Democratic primary in 2020 when like Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and Bernie Sanders, like the three of them were each getting so much support that no one of them could get support. So and then like more moderate Democrats were freaking out about a too progressive candidate to go up against Trump, remember? So everybody coalesced behind Biden and South Carolina, and then which followed Super Tuesday, and then that was it, right? So in theory, that her donors could have just been looking for this type of trajectory, and it's going in the direction they want. And like the Supreme Court is the X factor here, because I would have assumed if there was a plan like this, they'd have been in on it, because they're all in on it. But maybe the courts are against the. Well, I guess that's another can of worms that I don't even want to open up.
We're coming to SCOTUS in a minute. I think back to DC. I think that I think that if Trump wins again, he will move the nation's capital to Mar-a-Lago. He's hated DC from the very beginning. Talked about what a dump the White House was. Spent as little time in DC as possible. So I mean, he's just kind of declared war on DC from the very beginning.
Well, I don't think he'd be allowed to do that all by himself, for the record.
Well, if he gets presidential immunity from SCOTUS, he can kind of do whatever he wants.
Oh, God.
But yeah, Super Tuesday's tomorrow. Can Haley pull off an upset? This is kind of her last. What are we seeing for this? Especially so we have kind of a mixture of MAGA states and somewhat more moderate states. If Haley has a decent showing, I think she will definitely continue. And actually, I think California may be the big one on this one. Or will she have a terrible night and just drop out? I think tomorrow's the test for her. If she gets annihilated tomorrow night, I think her race is over.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I just had this thought while you were talking, and I scribbled it down really fast so I wouldn't forget. You know how everyone's kind of freaking, and I know we're immediately going to SCOTUS, but this just jumps in my head. What if they're waiting for Super Tuesday to decide on Trump?
Well, maybe.
Right?
You mean SCOTUS?
Yeah. What if the reason that they haven't taken the case and fast tracked it yet, and I'm putting the yet on there very intentionally, is that they wanted to see what the polls were doing. They don't want to be in the position to decide the election, essentially, right? Because we've gone that route before and it was done badly. So what if they're trying to see if the party will essentially be okay with a Nikki Haley? If her numbers keep going up, if she stands a chance, then depending on how Super Tuesday turns out, Haley does good. What if they then fast track the case, hear it, and start the trial?
You mean the immunity case?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
This is a theory that popped into my head 43 seconds ago, so it has not been vetted. So I want that disclaimer out there. Okay, literally, this was a random canon thought. Okay.
I think the Super Tuesday mattered for the Colorado case because now they ruled 9-0 that states can't kick Trump off the ballot. In terms of presidential immunity, I don't know that Super Tuesday matters all that much. I mean, they just have to clear their ruling by. You're right that we don't know if they're going to fast track it or if it's going to be a ruling that comes out in July. I don't know. It could be.
Yeah, but what I mean by that is in a world where the court is bought and paid for by the Republican Party think tanks that are the Federalist Society, right? Which is not outside the realm of possibilities given what we've seen lately.
So you're just betting on total corruption,
yes, in a world where everything is as corrupt as it has proven itself to be in the last portion of reality we have all shared together. If that is what it is. If the Federalist Society is look, we either have to see if the voters will break with Trump if they have to, if there's enough momentum to see that people will in the end support a Republican, okay, then fast track and get him out of there. We know Republicans hate Donald Trump. They use him the same way they use him, or
you mean establishment Republicans,
yeah, even the most except for the fucking the MAGA faction of the party in Congress. Yeah, party elites, the Senate fucking hates him.
Yeah.
So if they need Donald Trump because he rallies voters to a party that is bleeding voters, and he needs them because he needs people who are spineless enough to let him trample all over them because they have no integrity. So if we need a spineless, power-hungry political party, that is the GOP. So good pick, Donnie. But in a world where the Supreme Court works for the Republican Party, if they can prove Nikki Haley viable, they'll let Trump go down. If Nikki Haley can't be viable, then they'll try and save him.
I don't think they're that. I don't think the whole court is bought off by the Republican Party. I think
you don't think they're that openly corrupt?
Well, I think Alito and Thomas are incredibly corrupt. I don't think like the Republican Party is going to use the Supreme Court to like, decide Super Tuesday or something like that. I don't think. I don't know that it works.
I'm just gonna remind you of Bush v. Gore, and the fact that 3 of these justices were involved, either defending or ruling thereupon.
Yeah, maybe. So some of these states are, I don't know, like this might be a mixed bag, which is why I think, if she has a terrible night, she's going to drop out. California is interesting because California Republicans are actually pretty far to the right. You'd think that like California might be a state she could win. But yeah, he'll win Alabama, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, all this stuff. She might win Vermont. Who knows? Virginia.
Actually, it would be interesting to see her win. If she could win Virginia and Vermont, that would be a real interesting development for realignment purposes, not for her presidential campaign purposes, but for like how the breakdown of these parties might land, if that makes sense. So that'll be fun to see. But yeah, given the states that are on Super Tuesday, woof. Well, actually, how many of them are open primaries?
I actually don't know. They all have different. They all have different rules. I haven't looked that up, but yeah, that's a good point.
That'd be an interesting thing. I'll probably look at tonight, because if enough open primary states, Democrats could come in and be willing to swing it. So
it's so funny to me that just like, it's
why are there balloons?
Whoa, there's balloons.
Did you just see balloons? What happened? Why did I don't know. I just put balloons on the screen. I'm just glad you saw them too, because otherwise I would think I had a brain tumor.
I should have just pretended like I didn't see them to freak you out.
You're gonna gaslight me into thinking that I'm like hallucinating digital balloons.
What balloons?
The people listening at home, they're like, "What the fuck is happening right now?" Sorry, there were digital balloons
like
that flew up on the screen.
It's I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Every state's going to be a little different. California is going to be interesting because this will also decide the California general election, because for the Senate campaign, because California is a top 2 primary system. So in California, it doesn't matter what party you're in. The top 2 in the primary go on to the general. So this will be, there's a few candidates for Senate to replace Dianne Feinstein in California. This will narrow it down to 2 for the general election. There's always a Republican in California. They're always like, oh, can the Republican win this time? And this time it's Steve Garvey, who's been in these debates with Schiff and Porter and Bartley. But the Republican in California always gets like 10% of the vote. So it's really, it's just like, they're always like,
yeah, I heard the scandal around it, I heard was that Katie Porter was upset because she thought like Schiff was trying to push Garvey's candidacy because he thinks it's easier to beat him than her. Which it's true. It would be probably, but I don't think Schiff would do that. Do you think Schiff would? I don't think he would do that.
No.
I think the only reason he'd want a Republican in the race is so he could point to how Republicans suck nationally. But I think Democrat on the ticket is probably
Schiff is not fucking with MAGA Republicans at all. And that's the thing, is like California Republicans are definitely MAGA, of the MAGA ilk, which is why they have no success in California, because they've been unable to like moderate themselves over the years.
Well, that actually makes sense too, because like Texas Democrats, the ones that are there, well, actually, I don't know, it might not be as true in Texas, but you think that people who are that surrounded by, the party opposition as members of a political party that just sells victimization, right? Like they're of course going to get radicalized because they feel the surrounded by liberals more than most people,
Oh yeah, they're so victimized in California.
So victimized. So hard
the way they are.
to live where the movies
Again,
are
it should
made.
be the fact that Republicans can't realize that Nikki Haley is such a better candidate against Biden than Trump is still interesting to me.
Yeah.
And we've had the conversation about like should Biden drop out, but I don't know. It's interesting on the Republican side too. So on the Colorado piece, so yeah, Colorado Super Tuesday. So Colorado is on Super Tuesday. That ruling came out today, so just at the nick of time. I don't know how they like that. I don't know what kind of damage they did to the like elections workers in Colorado to have to like scramble to make sure that I guess they don't. I guess if they had ruled he came off the ballot, that would be a fuck because they would have to take him off the ballot. But anyway, the SCOTUS rules 9-0 to keep Trump on the ballot in Colorado. So Trump will be on the ballot in Colorado after the Colorado Supreme Court booted him off the ballot. Supreme Court ruling 9-0 that states cannot remove presidential candidates from their ballot over 14th Amendment considerations, and went on to say in their opinion that requesting basically an act of Congress, saying an act of Congress is needed to further define that 14th Amendment insurrection disqualification, which is like one fucking sentence. And we've now had like years worth of interpretations on that one sentence. If that applies to Donald Trump, Supreme Court saying that it may, but states cannot make that determination. So Donald Trump is back on the ballot in these states that have booted him off. What's your thoughts, Kathy, on our SCOTUS person, on our constitutional person? Should we maybe just have a fucking constitutional convention and sort all this shit out so we're not trying to interpret one sentence from the 18th century? Or I guess that one from the 19th century?
Maybe, but I could go on and on and on about constitutional convention in both pro and con. So I feel like if you want me to do that, that needs to be a whole other episode. Okay?
That'll be deep dive next time. We'll deep dive that next time.
You know, put a pin in that one. But what I will say is that I think it's very interesting how much the 14th Amendment is coming up lately. Especially considering where the 14th Amendment came from and what its original purpose was. And that's what I think is most interesting in this case. And I'm going to surprise some people here, but I want you to stick with me to the end because I think this is the right ruling by the court. Okay. And, you know, communists on TikTok have been yelling at me for a week, so I'm disclaiming this. Give me a minute and I'll make it make sense. Okay.
I actually agree with you, but give your explanation.
This is a Federalist Society court, okay? And there's a little bit of an irony to that because the Federalist Society is named for James Madison, who was originally a Federalist, but also famously broke with the Federalist Party to create the Democratic
That always weirds me out. It's for me.
Right, and it's almost like they don't know that, and like literally the deal breaker there was like the power of the federal government. Now they are definitely in the spirit of their society in the James Madison lane, right? The way I wrote it was the right way, Alexander, not your necessary and proper bullshit, right? I'm being founding fathers in my head. I'm back to Unit 1 AP Gov here. But what this ruling has done is literally give more authority to the federal government, which is so totally the opposite of what they were literally bought and paid for to do. To see conservative justices upholding the 14th Amendment's federal authority, because the 14th Amendment was about expanding federal authority over the states and limiting the role of states and what they have to do, about making it dead ass clear to the Confederacy, if you will, that you're part of America. America isn't part of you. Right? Like at the end of the day, where daddy sit down, right? The 14th Amendment is the most daddy amendment of the daddy amendments, if you will. And the fact that they went out of their way to make clear that this is something only the federal government can do. Okay, they are giving this authority to the federal government. They are expanding federal authority. So for a conservative court whose sole purpose was to expand states' rights, to justify states potentially seceding a union, they just gave the federal government extra authority to prevent that. They made very clear that no, states can't decide who can run for federal office any more than states can decide whether they're part of a federal government. And I think they're a little bit kind of laying the groundwork for that. And Sonia Sotomayor, like the three liberal justices on the court, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, and the quote I pulled out specifically was meant to insulate from further controversy, right? And a lot of people have read that to mean that they're trying to put their shields up because of the controversy of the Bush v. Gore ruling and the, legitimacy issues of all the corruption I was alluding to a few minutes ago that I totally believe exists, right? But what I think a little bit they also meant
a lot of corruption
is that we're doing this now. We're going to make the Republicans, we're going to make Donald Trump sing our praises for how, yes, we're sticking to the letter of the law. We're upholding the letter of the law. So in the event that we have to, make him face trial for his crimes, which is, normal, we have the legitimacy that you just gave us. Does that kind of make sense?
Right.
You trust our ruling so much on this one. You sang our praises for ruling in your favor. Now, if we rule against you next week, this is our guard. This is what we're saying, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit what I think they meant by that.
It's just weird to me that I agree with you because I don't think you want. I don't think it's the state's purview to be interpreting the federal constitution. Mm-hmm. The Colorado Supreme Court's job is to interpret Colorado law. Mm-hmm. So it's just bizarre to me that the states would drift into that realm. At the same time, the Constitution gives the states the power to run elections, and the ultimate arbiter of who gets states electors is states legislatures, and we've had argument on how literal that meant. So I do think there is a gray area there that needs to be cleaned up. And I think we need to square away exactly what that means and how that works. And I think a lot of the court was dealing with that. A lot of the arguments on the Colorado side was, well, you can't just let the guy get elected. It would because SCOTUS was arguing that, states throwing people off the ballot willy-nilly would cause chaos. Colorado was arguing that, well, letting some dude get elected and then having Congress be like, oh no, they're an insurrectionist, and throwing out the vote of the people would also cause chaos. So it is a gray area, but I do agree with you. I think this was the right call. I don't think this was the right move to throw him off the ballot. And by the way, this was not Joe Biden throwing his political opponent off the ballot. Fox News ad nauseum has been talking about, and Donald Trump ad nauseum talking about how this was Joe Biden not wanting to face Trump in a presidential election.
It was actually a former Trump voter who sued Colorado to say, no, not again.
It was not Biden. It was not the Department of Justice. It was voters in Colorado that brought this as a state issue. So anyway,
yeah. Joe Biden's Justice Department has yet to touch this fucking thing. That's no part of it whatsoever.
Yeah. So what's your 5-4 split on the per curiam? You had that on there too.
Yeah. Because so I told you the three liberal justices signed on to make the point about the future controversy, but Amy Coney Barrett, now this bitch is surprising me a couple of times.
She's very surprising. She actually is very surprising.
It's making me have some questions about who, oh God, what was it? Was it the Reagan appointee that he, Kennedy? No, not Kennedy. Yeah, Kennedy. No. Yeah, Kennedy. How he was supposed to be a conservative judge, but very much was swingy. Was very swingy.
Oh, he swung with the best one.
There are theories on that one too, but that's a whole other episode.
Yes, he was notoriously the swing vote. He would go.
But he was meant to be a conservative, bend on the court, and he ended up being the pivotal vote in a lot of progressive rulings. Truthfully,
Obergefell. He's the he wrote the opinion on legalizing gay marriage.
Yeah. Did I tell you that the first time I taught that in AP Gov, how I had a brain fart in the beginning of class and I couldn't remember what it was called. And I said Olive Garden versus Hodgepodge or something like that. And I apologized to the entire gay community, but I could not remember the name of the case. It was they added it to the curriculum. They added it to the curriculum, with 3 days to teach it before the test. And I just started laughing. And it was one of those, I knew I was saying it wrong on purpose. So it was just what jumped into my head until I could find it. It was space filler, but that's what came out was Olive Garden versus Hodgepodge. And it's
That's
kind of a
officially what
running
that
joke.
case is now.
Yeah, it's a little bit running joke in my class. It's Olive Garden versus Hutch. But, well, it used to be. I'm not allowed to teach it anymore, but what are you going to do? Florida.
That's true. Well, yeah, that's true. Also can't teach it anymore.
Yeah, but she came out with an opinion as well that was kind of interesting, where she's kind of trying to speak to the unity of the court, right? She really wanted to highlight the how we all agreed that this was the right decision, and this was a 9-0 ruling, and we're not a dysfunctional court, and we respect each other, and everything's fine. Don't worry about it. We're totally legitimate, like totes, right? Which is a little bit, okay, you're adorable, like nice try, but also interesting. She just wants
friends.
Well, to my point, like, remember how I said she got here by playing the role of yes sir, whatever, with the boys club, but now she's there to be a part of the boys club, but she's not a part of the boys, because when you look at that boys club, she's not allowed to play. And that's got to be a really isolating place, because ideologically she does not get along with the women of the court, and ideologically she's not allowed to speak unless spoken to with the men of the court. So that's a lonely place to be. So I could see her forming a bond with the women. I know this is very strange, but I could see this becoming a male-female Supreme Court where she starts forming bonds. That's not to say she's going to change her opinion on things, but she may let their voices sway her more than we thought she would have been. And that could, I mean, she's young and she could sit on the court for the rest of her life. What if her and like Ketanji Brown, I can't talk today, Ketanji Brown Jackson end up like BFFs, like crocheting together on YouTube when they retire, because they spent their whole lives together on the court.
Did you hear that? I know there was at least a female sort of bond between Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I know whether that continued with the rest of the females on the court. They definitely had a strong female bond, even though they were on opposite sides of the ideological spectrum. But did you hear that Kagan and Sotomayor have like movie and candy nights? They like go over to each other's houses and like just binge on candy.
I want to be a fly on the wall for movie night with those two. Oh my God. They probably talk about
Kagan on J-Date or whatever.
No, you know what? They talk through the whole movie, but their dialogue is probably better than the film. They probably have the best candy. The best candy. I bet they have like the spicy candies.
Yeah,
I want to watch. I want to watch movies with the justices.
They, Ketanji Brown Jackson and Amy Coney Barrett are trying to break into movie and candy club, and they,
you know it, man. It's going to be like Babysitters Club SCOTUS edition.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Sweet Valley High SCOTUS edition, Sweet Valley SCOTUS. Oh my God, fan fiction is coming, you guys.
Wow.
No, it's not. I don't have time, but seriously, that would be fun.
It's been done to death, but you and I could do it hilariously, like a fictional behind the scenes of what SCOTUS is like off camera and stuff. Their little like internal friendships and politics and stuff.
Nah, it would be the Sweet Valley High edition though.
But I think you're
like the SCOTUS boys would be like so gross and so mean.
I really wonder if now, especially with like Kavanaugh on the court, like, and I think you're right. I mean, you have the three liberals on the court are all women now. Coney Barrett has become a swing vote. So there is this weird ideological split between male and female on the court. You have Roberts and Barrett that are swing votes, but other than Roberts, all the men on the court are conservative. And do you think that Kavanaugh's like a pig? Like, do you think they talk to him? Is Thomas like a pig because of the pubic hair on the Coke can, or like?
I think Kavanaugh is a pig? Okay, like
no, I mean, do you think that they think that Kavanaugh is a pig and like won't go near him or whatever?
Yes. Okay, you saw the way that man behaved in his confirmation.
It was pretty bad.
So imagine what he's like when there aren't national television cameras in the eyes of millions of Americans on him. I bet he farts in the room and tells everyone to guess what he ate for lunch. That is who Brett Kavanaugh is. Okay. And Neil Gorsuch is, well, my granddaddy said. He's that fucking asshole, right?
He's pretty elitist.
Clarence Thomas is the guy who is, I guarantee you, complains about everybody playing the victim whilst playing the victim. That is who Clarence Thomas is to his core as a person. John Roberts
had to ban vending machines in the Supreme Court because of
Clarence Thomas. John Roberts is the kid who everybody liked in high school, but nobody was friends with. Okay. That's right. John. You know what I'm
sweet house for the parties.
No, he was like the nice kid who always let you copy his homework, and everyone talked to him, but nobody invited him to the parties, right? Like, everyone liked him, but nobody was friends with him. But nobody could say anything bad about him, but nobody really hung out with him. That's John Roberts.
I got you.
Right? And who am I missing? Sam Alito.
So
Samuel Alito is like the malicious hall monitor.
Well, he seized control of the court from John Roberts in a sort of a coup kind of way, and
that's what I mean, right?
They're probably a little afraid of him. They're probably like, "Oh fuck with this guy because he's got like, he's gonna, send his goons after you or something."
Yeah, so he, like Gorsuch, has the rich daddy and the elitism, but he's also like a bully who the school gave a little bit of power to, and that little bit of power has made him like tyrannical.
Yeah,
that's
poor Ketanji Brown Jackson. She seems like she's so sweet and she's just
probably
do the right thing,
right? Yeah, she's just probably sitting over there, like painting her nails at lunch, like these bitches crazy, and she's not wrong.
Well, anyway,
she probably has the best social commentary. That like I want to sit with her at lunch and just listen to what she has to say about every single one of them. I bet she's hilarious. You can tell she's funny. You can tell she's funny looking at
her confirmations with her confirmation hearing where her husband was like crying in the audience. That was the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Just clearly,
she's adorable.
Adores her.
She looks so cool. Like she just looks like a cool person. You can kind of tell when people are cool. You know what I mean?
So anyway, 9-0 ruling, which is actually fairly more common than people realize. And this court has tried to make that point a lot, that actually the like highly divided rulings are actually not less common than they actually agree a lot on a lot of cases more than they disagree. But 9-0 is something, you'd always expect at least like one person to hop on a dissent just to make like a devil's advocate argument or something like that.
Yeah,
to be 9-0,
and it's usually Sam Alito. He's usually first to jump at, I'll be that asshole. But on this particular case, he needed everybody to be on his team.
So a little bit of division over whether or not Congress should take that up. But it just, can we fucking have, other countries, their constitutions are like 300 pages long and they actually like explain every little thing. Ours is like a 40-page pamphlet. This insurrection thing is one sentence. I'm like, can we please just have a constitutional convention and spell this shit out? So, I mean, I know it would basically like end the legal profession in the United States because, have to, at least on the federal courts circuits, because that's all they do is spend their time interpreting our 40-page pamphlet constitution. But it would just, our society would function so much better if we just had some of this shit like spelled out in black and white.
Or just a clearer understanding of where the line between federal and reserve, like the 10th Amendment is the problem. Totally. Everything else is reserved to the states. Yeah, like most of the Constitution is pretty, like, it's not verbose, but it's like clear and concise. But it's that 9th and 10th Amendment is where we need some work, right? If we were going to start enumerating rights, you don't just be like, and if we forgot about it, it counts too. That leaves way too much judicial interpretation to a world that says they don't like it, okay? And like the federal government's in charge of everything unless we forgot about it. Not a great line either.
Yeah.
Okay, so tends to cause problems. So I think if we could clear up that a little bit more, which to be fair is what 14 was trying to do, but again, substantive due process, maybe more tangible due process.
Well, speaking of Madison, when you're just trying to get something as passed as quickly as possible that as many people in the room will agree with, you don't want to be too verbose, too wordy.
Yeah. Which is why everyone hated Hamilton, remember?
Exactly. Jesus Christ. So anyway, 9-0 decision. Trump stays on the ballots. States cannot unilaterally kick a candidate for president off their ballot for insurrection. At least it would take an act of Congress to sort of specify how that process would work. What are the odds of this Congress taking that up in the next 5 years or so? Anyway, it's definite gray area.
Like on that. This Congress can barely keep the government open. I'm not going to imagine they can amend the Constitution.
Complex constitutional questions that they need to like enumerate.
They're working on keep the lights on. So
yeah. So interesting. 2-year anniversary of the Ukraine war was last week. We'll get into some foreign policy stuff here. So 2-year anniversary of Ukraine. I wanted to kind of get into a refresher of how it started, as we're sort of our aid is kind of stalled in the United States Congress to them. So this would have been Irene's segment, but she's gone now. So just, split in the Ukrainian government over ties to Russia, whether they want to be in the Russian sphere or the European sphere of influence. When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, Ukraine, which was a full-fledged Soviet Socialist Republic, got independence from the Soviet Union, so Russia and Ukraine became independent countries in 1991 when the Soviet Union dissolved. Ukraine had all of the Soviet Union's nukes because that's where they parked their nukes, was in Ukraine. So they actually, in 1994, they had the Budapest Memorandum where Ukraine gave up all their nukes in exchange for Russian protection and agreement from the United States and France and the UK not to attack Ukraine. But from 1991 to 2014, you had pro-Russian governments in Ukraine. It stayed very much within the Russian sphere of influence. Mm-hmm. Ukraine was always very pro-Russian society until 2014, when you had tides turning against Vladimir Putin. You had the dignified revolution of 2014, where they ousted their pro-Putin pro-Russian government and started making overtures to join the European Union and NATO. That's when Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea, and that's where we are today. There's also the issue of the Black Sea. Putin wants Ukraine to remain within the Russian sphere of influence because Russia has a very, very tiny access to the Black Sea, which is their only water border that doesn't freeze. So they want Ukraine being in NATO and an enemy of Russia makes that Black Sea trading route really tenuous for them. So that's why they invaded. But here we are 2 years later, and Russia is really mounting that offensive again. Sweden has joined NATO. So yeah, but U.S. aid is basically becoming existential to Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine won't last a year without it. So we'll see. See how it goes. What are your thoughts on Ukraine 2 years in? Remember when Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years ago, and we all thought the world was going to end? We all thought that Russia would take Ukraine in 3 weeks.
Well, Putin thought he would take. No, I never did. Not with Daddy US backing them anyway. What he's not wrong. Ukraine won't last long without American assistance, and I know the EU has stepped up their efforts because, to be fair, they really need to, because they're at a greater risk than we are.
Yeah, they finally got that 54 billion in. Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know. This one has been bugging me for a really long time, just because there's so much history in it. And I keep going back to Putin's stupid little interview with Tucker Carlson, where he's basically recounting Russian history. And then when you were going through to their trade route on the Black Sea, how far back, literal centuries, okay, they have been fighting over the access to the Black Sea. So it's it frustrates me because the fighting in Ukraine is so incredibly important to keep Europe safe. And it's getting caught up in a bunch of bullshit nonsense in America that has nothing to do with it, because the people holding up this aid, assuming for a second that they're not just Russian hacks, which they might be, but
I think they're Russian hacks.
Yeah, probably. But assuming they're not, let's just say that they do in fact just have ideological issues about America funding more war, because to be fair, we do a lot of that. But it's their party that made it happen, if they really want to unpack that one. But again, a conversation for another day. But I think, given their personalities, though, given the way they talk about everything else in the world, if you sat them down and explained it to them like they were 5, right, and said, if this happens, and things for you go sad, right, I think they'd understand why we need to send the money, and we'd be able to get there. But that's what drives me nuts about all of this, is because there's none of that. There's no reason. There's no critical these people are not there to run the country. They are there for sort of the same reason that the Tucker Carlsons of the world are on television. He's not there to help keep you informed or help you understand the world better. And Boebert and Taylor Greene and all of those assholes, they are not there to govern your country. They are all there to sell you fear, to make you crazy so they can manipulate you so they can get rich at your expense. Every single one of them. And the louder you yell in defense of them, the more their plan is working. And it makes me insane. So that is my official position on Ukraine. I cannot believe so many people have been this fucking confused or brainwashed or whatever you want to do for so long. How do you think Vladimir Putin taking control of more territory and advancing his empire into Europe will end well for America? Explain that to me now. Go ahead. I dare you. I dare you to explain how that is a good thing for America.
Russia does not get to invade Ukraine because of ethnic Russians living in Ukraine. We settled the whole, like, a country can't expand their borders because of ethnic claims, sort of in World War II. They don't get.
That was the literal reason for taking Czechoslovakia. Like they wrote it down and everything.
They don't get to invade Russia because Ukraine is corrupt. That's my favorite one. Well, Ukraine's corrupt, like Russia.
That was the literal reason for invading Poland. They wrote it down. Okay, like we've seen this play out before.
They don't get to just invade and take over another country because of these like bullshit concerns. If they're concerned about Black Sea trade, transport, shipping of goods, I mean, that is something that you can negotiate with the international community. There's nothing that Putin couldn't have gotten through negotiation on the Black Sea stuff that he had to get by literally taking over Ukraine. He's completely full of shit. He just wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. He's a megalomaniac. And everyone in the United States. Yeah.
Yep. Should I tell him about my crazy theory about what I think he's doing? Because like left-wing TikTok has like made me a villain. Apparently they called me both a fascist and a moderate in the same conversation. Which
left-wing TikTok is kind of repulsive.
I don't know. But to
They're
be fair, the moderate one was more confusing than the fascist one, because to like a delusional communist, I guess anybody's a fascist if you're not a communist, right? But a moderate, like, how did you land on me? Have you ever spoken to me is the real question. But my theory on it is that we know that they've been using social media networks and things like this to like flood propaganda and fake news to convince the MAGAs that like whatever the fuck new thing they believe this week. I kind of can't keep up with it, to be fair. It's weird. Regardless. But I think he's also recycling some Cold War era anti-American, anti-capitalist propaganda to divide the Democratic Party, aware of tensions between progressives and more establishment Democrats. He can exploit that because like the Democratic Party just needs to stay united, and they basically run the table for the foreseeable future. So if you can split the Democratic Party, do that. And he's got literally 70 years of propaganda in an old dusty chest somewhere. So just like wipe it off, change a few words around, put it on a meme, and now all of a sudden Cannon's a fascist. Who knew? Who fucking knew? Apparently, I defend capitalism, Troy. It's news to me.
Yeah, I didn't realize how right wing we were until we started talking to. We're gonna do a whole. You and I deserve a whole like rant on the far left, at least on TikTok.
It just makes me crazy because like it all.
And I'm talking like communists, not like.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing is like they're not actually even communists. They have their misunderstanding of communism, which they have made themselves believe means I have a misunderstanding of communism. So where I'm advocating for not a pure communist system and not a pure capitalist system, but a socialist system rooted in democratic values, because democracy is putting the power in the hands of the people in a communist style, and socialism is the accountability and allow areas for innovation. So I'm literally over here saying we should be socialist. And he's like, or these people, there's more than one person, was like, you're a fucking capitalist psyop. Fed. I got called a Fed too. I was like, so calling for socialism makes me a capitalist. Good understanding.
Well, I also love the rants
there.
You're all into the conspiracy theories today. I love it. But I also love the take that like mixed models are bad when like literally Lenin permitted limited free markets. Like Lenin had a mixed model system. So I think that's kind of funny.
Like, and both Adam Smith and Karl Marx like can acknowledge that. Like, I don't know. It's fine.
Let's move on to some Gaza stuff. So Benny Ganz, that was the big news today. It was Benny Ganz who
Seriously.
Here's more of your conspiracy theories now, Kathy. No, this is
conspiracy theory.
This is actually pretty
interesting.
Maybe it is. So Benny Ganz is the main political opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu. Mm-hmm. They're currently serving in a united sort of war cabinet government. Netanyahu invited all the opposition leaders to join his basically a war cabinet while they're fighting Hamas. So it's technically a unity government at the moment, but Benny Ganz is the official political opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu. Former general, not, a liberal or a progressive or a left-wing guy by any stretch. He's actually pretty center-right, less corrupt by far and less right-wing. I will say he is less right-wing than Benjamin Netanyahu, who has proven himself to be just an absolute like right-wing extremist, fascist. But anyway, Benny Ganz at the White House today, meeting with Kamala Harris, who's kind of taken over the lead on the Israel stuff, calling for a immediate ceasefire for 6 weeks. Was it 6 weeks or 6 months? I always get the time. 6 weeks, which is basically what's on the table anyway. So, what are your thoughts on the Benny Ganz them working with Benny Ganz now? Maybe what does that signal to the world?
Well, what it signals, I guess maybe it is conspiracy land, whatever, or theoretical analysis of brilliant political scientist, whatever. I'm just stroking my own ego over here. It's big news. And I've been talking about this forever, right? That Biden's foreign policy chops are where he'll really shine, but he's good enough at it that he doesn't do it in public because no good foreign policy is done in public, right? And I likened this to his potential Camp David Accords, like way back in the long ago when this whole thing first broke through, remember? He's got an interesting multilateral group of allies that are helping work with this thing. Right now, I believe it's Hamas that they have to get to fully agree to the deal. Like they've got Israel for the most part on board with whatever it is they've negotiated, which again, we don't have the full details of. We have limited information on, because if you let too much information out, you can curtail the talks, which is I've been saying. Yeah, and like I've said a bunch of times, in criticism of why do they keep vetoing the ceasefire in the United Nations? Well, because they don't want to do anything to screw up these negotiations. So on the surface, it looks frustrating, but if he's doing that, there's a reason he's doing it. It's because he's trying to negotiate something bigger. And sticking your middle finger in somebody's face while you're trying to get them to come to the table to agree with you on something doesn't usually help them come to the table and agree with you a little bit. So it's sort of like Biden's letting himself be the one to take the punches on this one to try and win Israel over. But the overall consensus is that Bibi is the problem. People in Israel say Bibi's the problem. People in our government say Bibi's the problem. And essentially
a lot of anti-Bibi protests in Tel Aviv, by the way, from Israelis.
Yeah. And essentially Hamas is I think at the point where it's Bibi's the problem, right? Because he's all but said annihilation is our only goal. That's it. Right. So if this meeting at the White House to me signals that Biden is doing one of those deals that I talked about, right? He's going to bring Hamas to the table by getting Bibi out of power. And I think this is a meeting where they're trying to negotiate. Because remember, it's a weird war council. They couldn't form a government, and they put Bibi in charge of this weird war council, which means that if they could put this together, then they can take it apart or they can shift things around. So if he's over here speaking with Harris, which means he's speaking with Biden and she's the mentor teacher, right? So Biden is the supervising teacher, which is me. And she's the intern teacher. I have an intern for anybody who doesn't know, and I'm loving it. It's amazing. But that's what I think is kind of happening. He's coaching her through diplomatic negotiations, which is good forethought for an 81-year-old president, to be fair. If that's what the deal is on the table, if they can get this guy to go over there, get the war council to remove Bibi from top of the ticket, put him or whoever they agree to on there, then let Bibi face trial for all his corrupt crimes, put a Hamas representative on a council government with the overseeing of this like multilateral thing that they've met with, like, so Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, the United States, and I feel like I'm missing one. And whoever else I can't think of in this moment, right? Would all come together. I thought I said Egypt. Well, either one, whoever I missed. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But then they form together some sort of regional alliance similar to like a NATO agreement, right? Where they all acknowledge each other's like sovereignty and whatever and work together in a multilateral partnership. Because the thing with like, the best solution we all know is the two-state solution, right? Like we know that is kind of the best end place for Palestine, but that isn't something Benjamin Netanyahu is willing to do. So, and Ganz is like another single, like one party solution. He still wants like the state of Israel to have, he wants the same borders as Bibi, but he is willing to not conquer Palestine, if that makes sense. Like, and wants to create like that continuous like territory. So instead of it being the West Bank and then a big gap and then the Gaza Strip, he wants to create some sort of like contiguous, like connected Palestinian territory. So if that's what they're talking about, a way to do that, and get either a representative of Hamas, or we kind of need Hamas out of the picture too. So you might need to be working something out where you're replacing Hamas with the PLO or something, right? Like Palestinian Authority. I know they're not PLO anymore.
Well, you'd have to have, I think you'd have to have a Hamas representative that wasn't, or you'd have to have a Palestinian representative that wasn't Hamas. I think Hamas but like failed at this point.
Well, it has, but it's for the ceasefire. You're going to have to deal with Hamas, and that's where it gets sticky. So, so they're going to have to simultaneously negotiate a deal that they can get Hamas to agree with, and that will remove Hamas and Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, but in terms of the two-state, you also want to build up a two-state with, a functioning Palestinian political party that isn't Hamas. You know what I mean? So,
and that's what I think
now's the time for them to be making those kind of moves too, which again, Netanyahu doesn't want to do. He's going to stifle.
Yeah, he doesn't. And that's what and if I had to put my money on it, that's what I would say they're trying to do. The 6-week ceasefire or whatever that they're negotiating now, that's the first part of a longer term deal. That's to get the fighting over. And then from there, during that 6-week period, I would not be surprised if the United States isn't planning one of their really, really cool regime change things that they let the Israeli military do for them. Since, hey, you military so good at fighting, how about you just get rid of your own fascists?
You get like bombed by the far left for a week, and you come on the show and you're like, everything's.
If you're gonna call me a fascist, I'm going full Cheney. Okay.
I love it. So you're saying that Ganz is not at the White House as like an envoy from Netanyahu. You're saying they invited Ganz in as like on his own thing, being like, "Here, buddy, like here's our plan post Netanyahu. Are you on board with it?" Kind of thing.
Yes. Now
we're willing to turn Israel over to your control with these parameters, kind of thing.
Correct. That's what I think. Now, under the guise, I would say they invited him as an envoy for Netanyahu, but come on, man. Like, Joe.
Yeah.
He took him out for ice cream. He bought him some aviators. They're sitting there being old men with ice cream and talking about wouldn't you like to rule Israel?
Could he stop eating ice cream, please? For the love of God, it makes him.
Would you stop eating ice cream if you were 81 years old? Well, I guess.
It makes him look so dopey.
To me, I think it's the biggest baller move he could do. He's like, I'm 81 years old. I'm knocking on heaven's door. We all know it. So I'm going to be eating ice cream until I fall. And I understand the spirit of that, Joe. I'm on Team Joe for the ice cream. I would eat ice cream every day.
He's after the White House meeting with King Abdullah of Jordan, where Abdullah ripped the Israeli government a new asshole with Biden on camera. Israel's supposed to technically be our ally. Jordan is too, but to like rip Netanyahu a new asshole on camera with Biden literally standing behind him, as you know, on those comments, and then to have Netanyahu's number one opposition to the White House, I think is signaling in a lot of subtle statecraft hints there. So I'm on board with you. I don't know if I buy the quote unquote regime change bit of it, but I do think that they are prepping for a post Netanyahu world, and they would be stupid if they if they didn't. Well, you're not. I mean, it's regime change was our official policy like 15 years ago. So you're not.
I mean, I was being facetious by pointing out the fact that this is the thing that we do. We did it diplomatically long before we did it with wars. Could have taken a cue on that one. It's fine, whatever.
Bibi saying only total victory will end the conflict. Bibi just not backing this.
He's got to go.
He wants. He's got to go. Bibi wants permanent occupation, all that. U.S. vetoing ceasefire again. You covered that. So and then there's these dropping these MRE kits. So we dropped 38,000 meals on Gaza this weekend. A lot of people making a big deal about the fact that that's basically nothing. I mean, there's 2 million people that live in Gaza. And I think these are just like I don't know if they're single meal kits or they're single day meal kits. I don't know. But anyway, 38,000 MREs is not that many. But I'm a little confused because Biden said that more were coming. I don't think this is that. I don't think that was the only drop that they're ever going to do. Was that one drop?
Probably not. Normally when they start drops like that, there's like a series, like they have them scheduled and like, a few days out. So they can't,
everyone's pissed off about it. Like that's all we gave them was 38. No, I think the plan is to conduct a long term. I think drops are going to be like the new kind of normal. But this is still a huge problem for Biden. Even the eminent James Carville agrees. I can't stand James Carville, but
I can't either.
His analysis on this was spot on. This is it's already a huge tarnish on Biden's legacy. If they can't get some kind of a deal done before the election, this is, what Carville's point was the convention, and you talk a lot about how creepy it is, how similar this election is to 68. If you get to that Democratic convention in Chicago, by the way,
I've said it, man.
There's no deal or anything. We're kind of running out of time. You're gonna have
and an RFK on the ballot. Yikes!
You're gonna have riots at that convention, protests, violence on the floor. It's gonna be 68 all over again. The world's going to be the United States is going to look at the Democratic Party as like the party of chaos again, which is exactly how Nixon got elected. So shades of 68 all over again.
I know, but the worst part is that it's 68 and 68 on both sides, because like the Democrats will look like chaos, but it's not like Republicans are looking much more put together, right? And that's the real scary part, is that in 68, there was at least another legitimate party to fall back on. Sure, it ended up a corrupt criminal enterprise and just marched in that direction henceforth, but they didn't know that going in, The most frustrating thing about this to me is just, this is once again, like, I swear to God, the Democrats are the Miami Dolphins of fucking political parties. They can like rob defeat from the arms of victory like nobody I've ever seen. This should be an easy one for them, but they're just almost trying to make it as difficult as they could.
Biden's got to get Netanyahu out of there. They've got to stop this attack. If they go into Rafah and just slaughter people, this is an absolute humanitarian disaster. I really hope this Benny Ganz thing is a signal that Netanyahu's on his way out, and not just some sort of like, again, envoy scenario.
I'm convinced of it, because Biden is all about diplomacy and negotiation, and Bibi's point is, I'm not negotiating. Like, I win or else is not a negotiating point. And if that is where he is, then Biden can't be talking to him anymore. There is no more negotiating with Benjamin Netanyahu. So I'm going to your biggest opponent and I'm going to talk to him. That's sending a message to Bibi as loudly as anybody else. That's like, look, you know me well enough to know what I can do here, buddy. So remember how I told you the story about how Bill Clinton got really pissed off, slams the table and said, who's the superpower here? I feel like this is Joe Biden literally like waving his dick around saying, see who's the superpower here. Viagra, I'm sure. But in this particular case, but you kind of get the idea. And
But speaking of, did you see the article?
It took you that long to get that joke? Troy, seriously, get on your game.
I was doing my thing where I planned the next two like things that I'm going to say so I don't get caught off guard. But yes, I did hear you. But did you see the article sidetrack about Joe and Jill's sex life and how Joe Biden said the key to a successful marriage is a good sex life?
I did not
too
see
much
that,
information, but I appreciate it.
I don't understand why you're telling me this.
I appreciate because you just talked about Joe Biden on Viagra waving his dick around.
The proverbial political
seems like it has
dick,
context.
though.
I just think it was a little good on you guys, but a little bit TMI there. We're all proud of you guys.
That doesn't surprise me though. Somehow that does not surprise me.
Oh, they're adorable. You know I mean? They adore each other. They get it on constantly.
Yeah, I didn't need to hear about it in his presidential interviews, but it doesn't surprise me.
So yeah, the thing with Netanyahu again is it's not just him. He's representative of some crazy far right politicians in Israel, in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and he's been placating them. And I think that was he didn't really know where Netanyahu was going to go. He called this war cabinet, so he's bringing in his opposition into the government, which was a good sign at first. But he's been doing nothing but placating his right flank, and all these people that we'll talk openly about just killing every single Palestinian. We'll talk openly about expanding, pre-67 and retaking all that land and stuff. And so, he's placating that right wing base. He's trying to make sure he doesn't want to lose their support. So it's essentially that, it's their MAGA, Netanyahu is basically, Netanyahu's gone bye-bye. He's completely a spokesperson for their hard right. So,
yep. And I can't see him holding his position much longer, if you want the truth. Yeah.
Let's do Lie of the Week real quick.
Oh, yeah. Theme song and everything.
You're a lying sack of crap. Just a lying sack of crap. Well, you're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid doo-doo.
I need to know where this song came from. I swear to God.
So this week's Your Lying Sack of Crap, Troy's Lie of the Week, is Chaya Reichik, otherwise known as Libs of TikTok, the founder of Libs of TikTok, who went after Kathy at one point. I mean, not too intensely, but you made it into one of the Libs of TikTok videos.
I did indeed.
Libs of TikTok was a anonymous account on TikTok and Instagram and others, Twitter, that would basically take videos of mostly teachers and take them out of context to try and push the narrative that teachers were grooming students and trying to teach gender issues and stuff like that. Really a spearhead of the violent sort of genocidal anti-trans movement. We never really know who it was until, I don't know, a couple years ago. It came out. It was this woman, Chaya Reichik, and she's still on it. She's sort of the main spokesperson for the trans genocide movement in the United States. Here she gets interviewed by Taylor Lorenz, of all people. I'm not really sure why either one of them agreed to do this interview. Taylor Lorenz trying to be as diplomatic as possible with this woman who's clearly just a psychopath. This is a little bit of a taste. So Taylor Lorenz, first of all, they get into it, and basically Taylor Lorenz embarrasses Chaya Reichik. She can't even really name the reason why she's anti-trans.
Eradicate transgenderism, which I believe you suggested in a post today.
No, I never suggested that.
Oh, okay. You reposted a post that was
this is Taylor
advocating for that. What would happen to the people that have already medically, socially, completely transitioned and are leading happy lives? What would happen to them? What's your plan for that? If transgenderism doesn't exist, which it seems like that's what you believe, what happens to all the people living happy lives as trans people?
Well, first of all, the whole trans it's based on a lie. You can't change your gender.
Okay, but
so they could go live their life. I mean, I can't tell someone what to do in their house.
Sounds like you do want to tell people what to do in their house.
I never said that.
So you're totally okay with people being trans, just not as long as they're in public?
No, I never said that. They could. The whole thing is based off of a lie, and I think that this lie cannot be mainstream in our society. It's a lie.
And what harm is it causing, do you believe?
I like the truth. I like truth.
Right, but I'm saying what's the harm of people expressing their gender identity differently than you believe it to be? What harm are they causing?
Like I said, we are a nation of truth, and I seek the truth.
But that's But I'm asking about the harm. What's the harm? You might believe it to be false, but what's
the harm? Is that there's a lie that is very mainstream and is being embedded into every institution.
It's just absolutely embarrassing. She can't even really decipher or explain her position that transgenderism is somehow harmful. It's just absolutely embarrassing. She's just been profiting off of this sort of hate mongering and fear mongering of trans people. She's been one of the major players for years now in ginning up this idea that trans people are more violent, that transgenderism needs to be eradicated because transgenderism is some sort of a mental illness, and that trans people are dangerous anyway. So a lot of it was just based on doctored videos and half-truths and lies, full-on lies. One of them being that her big thing is that all of the recent mass shooters are trans individuals. And one of them that was a blatant lie was she spread the lie that the shooter at Uvalde, the Uvalde shooter, was a trans individual. That made a lot of circulation on right-wing Twitter because of fake posts that Chaya amplified on her Twitter account. And here Taylor confronts her about that, about amplifying that lie that the Uvalde shooter was.
Would you call misidentifying a shooter's sexuality defamation?
No, I wouldn't. Like I said, there's already a community note on it. So I'm glad that people now.
And you admit that it's wrong, right? Was the Uvalde
shooter and I wasn't the creator of that image.
Sure, but you can imagine if somebody amplified wrong information.
The media, like Washington Post and other places, they lie all the time. They're never held accountable. They never remove it. They lie and lie and lie. So I am not gonna. If you want to hold me to that level, then I get to hold you to that level as well, and all the other media. So I just don't think it's not accurate to compare it, because
was the Uvalde shooter trans?
The Uvalde shooter wasn't trans.
Got it. And so I guess knowing that you've posted wrong information, you're saying it should stay up and everybody else should be allowed to keep whatever they have up as well. Is that sort of your stance? Am I accurately understanding it?
Is there a law against...
No, not asking law. I'm just asking your personal sort of opinion. I'm just kind of curious because it seems like you have come after other people, such as vSphere and other critics, saying you posted wrong information about me, take it down. I totally get that. That's your prerogative.
It's different with defaming a journalist like...
I guess.
So, yeah. Interesting.
Does she know that there are, in fact, laws about it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that newspapers do, in fact, issue retractions quite frequently.
All the time.
Actually, usually entire pages are dedicated to retractions and corrections. It's fine. I'm fine. I just work here.
She's lying again. Yes, there is a law. There is laws against publishing inaccurate information. You can get sued for that. And no, the mainstream media does not just lie with impunity. That's not really how that works. She is just a pure foot soldier in this MAGA movement. She's one of the worst of the worst. But you really get a glimpse of how vile these people are when you look at her, spreading this vile crap about trans people being more violent, more likely to be a mass shooter, even though statistically trans individuals don't commit violent crime. They're not even on the map in terms of how much violent crime is committed compared to straight males. So she's doing it for clout and money, and it's disgusting.
I think it's funny because she's like the most ironic thing in the world, because she's exactly what she accuses everybody of being. Because notice she has no depth to anything she can say. She just repeats the same thing over and over and over again. She has no idea. So she is literally just repeating back things she has heard other people say and then denying accountability for it, which is every single post she has made's accusation against whoever she is going after. Like, yikes.
She's a vacuous moron. Yeah. She's that's another reason why she's indicative of their movement, because she's a complete idiot. She has no depth of thought whatsoever. She's also now she's a Fox News contributor. They actually script her appearances on Fox News because they let her go off script at first, and when she's off script like this, she sounds like a complete fucking moron. So yeah, it's interesting. Lie of the week, Troy's lie of the week, Chaya Reichik, for just being an absolute scumbag.
You're a lying sack of crap, just a lying sack of crap. Well, you're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid doo-doo.
So yeah, it was. I think Libs of TikTok was a much bigger threat. I think before we knew who it was, just because she could give it away with whatever she wanted. Now we know who it is. Now we know she's just this like total idiot on the right. So
indeed, she's a special one.
All right, so we're over time. We're gonna go into our deep dive now on the president. If you are a member of Patreon, check that out on the Patreon website, patreon.com/justbuylesscoffee. We're gonna leave the non-subscribers here. Thank you guys. We love you guys so much. Thanks for sticking around with us on this great adventure. Subscribe to Patreon if you want to get the exclusive content that subscribers get. $5 a month, you can get access to our deep dive content and also other behind the scenes content, like Kathy exploring the heyday of her salacious behavior back in the day. That
back
was,
when I was fun, before I was a grouchy old lady with back pain.
Telling stories of conquests back in the day. You can get access to stuff like
conquests, just adventures.
So thanks, everybody. Check us out on YouTube, Just Buy Less Coffee, for the video content. Download the episodes on the audio versions of the podcast to help our numbers. We love you guys, and we will see everybody next time. You've been listening to Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics, featuring Troy Matthews at Keep Troy Blue and Kathy Cannon at Cannon's Fodder. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X. All opinions are our own.